Captain Jake Morrison walked slowly into the huge council chamber on Nexus Prime. The room was bigger than any building he had ever seen on Earth. The walls curved up high above his head and were made of some kind of crystal that sparkled with different colors. Lights moved across the walls like living things. All around him sat the alien representatives of the Galactic Council. Some looked like giant insects with too many arms and legs. Others were like whales floating in tanks of water. Some were just balls of light that moved and changed shape. A few looked almost human, but had skin that glowed or eyes that were too big. Jake felt very small and alone as he stood in the center of the room. He was here to ask the Council to let humans join them as full members. Earth had been trying to get into the Council for 20 years, but they always said no. The Zephyrian ambassador was the first to speak. His name was Kethvar, and he looked like a giant praying mantis with 4 arms. When he talked, a machine changed his clicking sounds into words that Jake could understand. "Human," Kethvar said, and his voice sounded bored. "Your species wants to join our council, but what can you give us? Your ships are slow and weak. Your weapons are like toys compared to ours." Jake tried to stay calm, even though his hands wanted to shake. He pressed a button on his belt, and a blue light appeared in the air above him. The light showed pictures of Earth's best warships and weapons. The aliens looked at the pictures and started making sounds. Jake did not need a translator to know they were laughing at him. The whale-like cetaceans made deep rumbling noises. The crystal beings called Vorthans made musical sounds that were clearly mocking. Even the energy beings flickered in ways that seemed like laughter. One of the insect creatures chittered loudly. These primitive rockets could not defeat a single scout ship from any of our fleets. Council Prime Zara 9 floated in the center of the room. She was made of pure energy contained inside a shimmering field that hurt to look at directly. When she spoke, her voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Captain Morrison," she said, "we have reviewed your application many times. Humans are too young, too weak, and too backward to contribute anything meaningful to our alliance." Jake felt his face get hot with anger and shame, but he kept his voice steady. "Prime Zara 9, perhaps you judge us too quickly. We may surprise you." This made the aliens laugh even harder. Kethvar's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Surprise us? Your entire fleet could not defeat one of our mining vessels. However," Zara 9 continued, "we are not completely unreasonable. If humanity can provide something truly valuable to our combined defense forces, we might consider giving you provisional membership." Jake took a deep breath. This was the moment he had been waiting for. He reached for his communicator and spoke into it. "Admiral Lisa Carter, please begin the retrieval operation." Far away, in a dead solar system called Wolf 359, Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of her salvage ship. Through the big window in front of her, she could see their target floating in the asteroid field, like a sleeping giant. "There she is," Carter whispered to Commander Pete Sullivan, who stood beside her. "The USS Defiance. She has been lost out here for 300 years. The old battleship was huge, almost 2 kilometers long. Its hull was dark gray and covered with scars from tiny meteors and space dust. Parts of it looked melted or twisted, but even damaged, it looked powerful and dangerous." "Are you sure this old wreck will help us?" Sullivan asked. "It looks dead to me." Carter smiled. "Sometimes the old things work better than the new ones. Pete, our ancestors built this ship during the colony wars when Earth was fighting to expand into space. The records say it was special, but nobody remembers why." Back on Nexus Prime, Jake activated another hologram. This one showed the Defiance floating in space, surrounded by human salvage ships. "Honored council members," Jake said, "I present humanity's contribution to your defense fleet, The reaction was immediate and harsh. Every alien in the chamber started making their version of laughter. Some clicked, some rumbled, some chimed, and some just flickered with amusement. Cathvar stood up on his 4 legs and pointed all his arms at the hologram. This corroded piece of scrap metal? You offer us garbage and call it a warship? A hive queen. From the insect species made a sound like breaking glass. The power readings show it is completely dead. What weapons does it even have? I see no energy signatures at all. Zaranine's energy field pulsed with what looked like amusement. Captain Morrison, surely this is some kind of joke. This ancient Hulk could not power a single weapon, let alone fight in battle. Jake stood straight and looked around the room at all the laughing aliens. His voice was quiet but firm. Sometimes, honored counsel, the old ways prove better than the new ones. The laughter got louder. Some aliens were laughing so hard they were shaking or flashing bright colors. Jake felt his face burn with embarrassment, but he did not let it show. Meanwhile, Admiral Carter was already inside the Defiance with her engineering teams. Chief Engineer Roy Martinez led a group of technicians through the dark corridors of the old ship. Their flashlights made long shadows on the walls. "This place gives me the creeps," one of the technicians said. "It feels like something is watching." "You?" Martinez nodded. "I know what you mean. But look at these systems. I have never seen anything like them." The walls were covered with panels and displays that looked human, but also somehow different. There were patterns and symbols that did not match anything in Earth's databases. Some of the metal had a strange shimmer to it, like it was alive. Dr. Helen Brooks, the fleet's top scientist, was examining one of the walls with her instruments. "Roy, you need to see this. These crystalline structures are not human-made. Someone else worked on this ship." "What do you mean?" Carter asked as she joined them. "The basic design is definitely from Earth," Brooks explained. "But someone added things to it. Advanced things. These crystals are processing information faster than our best computers." As they talked, some of the lights on the wall started to glow softly. The team stepped back in surprise. "Did we do that?" Sullivan asked. "No," Martinez said, checking his instruments. "The ship is powering up by itself." On Nexus Prime, the council session was ending. The aliens were still chuckling about humanity's pathetic offering. Cathvar made a show of wiping his eyes with one of his 4 hands. "Very well," Zaranine said. "Your ancient relic is welcome to join our defense fleet when the next crisis arises. Though we expect nothing useful from such a primitive vessel." "When will that be?" Jake asked. "Sooner than you might think," said Admiral Tox Kalin, a 4-armed Zephyrian military leader. "Our long-range sensors have detected disturbing signals from the galaxy's edge. Something large is moving toward our space." The chamber grew quiet. Even the laughing stopped. "What kind of something?" Jake asked. Zaranine's energy field flickered with worry. "Gravitational signatures that match ancient records. The Devourers may be returning." A chill went through the room. Even Jake had heard stories about the Devourers. They were creatures from the dark times, before most of the current species had even discovered fire. They ate entire planets and then disappeared back into deep space. "If the Devourers have truly returned," Tox Kalin said, "we will need every ship we can get, even your human relic." Jake looked around the room at all the suddenly serious alien faces. A Defiance will be ready. He hoped he was telling the truth. Admiral Lisa Carter walked through the long corridors of the USS Defiance. Her footsteps echoed in the darkness, and her flashlight beam danced across the walls. The ship felt alive somehow, even though it had been dead in space for 300 years. "Admiral, you need to see this," Chief Engineer Roy Martinez called from up ahead. His voice sounded excited and a little scared, Carter hurried to catch up with him. Martinez was standing in front of a massive door that stretched from floor to ceiling. Strange symbols glowed softly around its edges, pulsing like a heartbeat. The door just opened by itself when I got close, Martinez said, like it was waiting for us. Beyond the door was a room that took Carter's breath away. It was enormous, with a curved ceiling that disappeared into shadows above. The walls were covered with displays and controls that looked both familiar and completely alien at the same time. "This is not possible," Dr. Helen Brooks said as she followed them into the room. She was holding her scanner, and it was beeping. Wildly, "These energy readings are off the charts. The power source for this room alone is bigger than our entire ship's reactor." In the center of the room was something that looked like a command chair, but it was made of the same strange crystal. Material they had seen throughout the ship. Lights flowed through it like water, creating patterns that seemed to respond to their presence. "Don't touch it yet," Carter warned as Martinez reached toward the chair. "We don't know what it does." Meanwhile, on the other side of the ship, Commander Pete Sullivan was leading his own team through what used to be the weapon base. What they found there made them stop and stare. "These are not human weapons," Sullivan said quietly. The lockers along the walls contained devices that hummed with their own power. Some looked like rifles, but they were made of materials that seemed to bend light around them. Others were clearly meant to be worn, like armor that sparkled with inner energy. One of the technicians, a young woman named Kate Davis, picked up one of the smaller devices. The moment her fingers touched it, the weapon came alive. Symbols appeared along its surface, and it felt warm in her hands. "Put it down," Sullivan ordered, but his voice was more curious than afraid. "Actually, wait. How does it feel?" "Like it belongs to me," Kate said with wonder. "Like it was made for me specifically." Back in the command room, Dr. Brooks was studying the readings from her instruments. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive energy conduits running throughout the ship. But they're not just carrying power. They're carrying information. Huge amounts of it." "What kind of information?" Carter asked. "I don't know. The patterns are too complex for our computers to decode. But whatever it is, it's active. The ship is thinking." Carter looked at the crystal command chair again. Something about it called to her, like a voice she could almost hear. "The ship's been waiting," she said softly. "Waiting for what?" Martinez asked. "For us, for humans." Carter stepped closer to the chair. This ship was built during the colony wars, when Earth was expanding into space. But the records about it were classified. Maybe now we know why. Far away on Nexus Prime, Captain Jake Morrison was in his temporary quarters when his communicator buzzed. It was a priority message from Admiral Carter. "Jake, you need to know." "What we found," Carter's voice said. "This ship is not just human. Someone else has been here. Someone with technology far beyond anything we understand." Jake activated the video connection. Carter's face appeared on the screen, and behind her, he could see the strange crystal formations and glowing displays. "The entire ship has been modified," Carter continued, "enhanced with technology that our best scientists can't even begin to understand. Whoever did this knew we would find the ship someday." "Any idea who?" Jake asked. "Not yet. But Jake, there's something else. The ship is responding to us, to humans specifically. It's like it was designed to work with our minds, our neural patterns." Before Jake could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the council station. Emergency lights flashed red, and automated voices spoke in dozens of alien languages. Jake ran to his window. In space outside the station, he could see the council's defense fleet scrambling. Ships were launching from docking bays and forming up in battle formations. His communicator crackled with an incoming message from the council chamber. "All species." Representatives report to emergency session immediately. Came the voice of Council Prime Zara 9. Jake ran through the corridors of the station. Other representatives were hurrying in the same direction, their faces showing fear and confusion. When he reached the council chamber, it was in chaos. Aliens were talking loudly in their various languages, and the translation systems were overwhelmed. Silence, Zara 9 commanded, and her energy field flared brightly. The room fell quiet. We have confirmed our worst fears. The Devourers have returned to our galaxy. A hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed the edge of the galaxy, where 3 massive shapes were moving through space. They were enormous, each one the size of a small moon. But they were not ships in any normal sense. They looked alive, with surfaces that pulsed and writhed like living tissue. Our deep space sensors detected them 6 hours ago, Admiral Tox Collin reported. They are moving toward the inhabited systems. At their current speed, they will reach the outer colonies in 4 days. Kethvar clicked his mandibles nervously. How many ships can we muster? Every available vessel from all member species. Tox Kalin replied, nearly 800 ships total. But against the Devourers, even that may not be enough. Jake stood up. What about evacuation? Can we move the people from the outer colonies? Impossible, Zara 9 said. There are billions of beings on those worlds, and the Devourers move too fast. By the time we could organize an evacuation, they would already be feeding. The word feeding sent a chill through the room. Everyone knew what the Devourers did to planets they attacked. They consumed everything living, leaving behind dead, empty worlds. We must make our stand at Kepler Station, Tox Kalin announced. It's our best defensive position, with the strongest shields and weapons platforms in the fleet. When do we leave? Jake asked. Kethvar looked at him with what might have been pity. Human, your ancient wreck is welcome to join the fleet, but do not expect it to contribute to the battle. The Devourers are not enemies that can be defeated by primitive weapons. Jake felt the familiar burn of anger, but he kept his voice steady. The Defiance will be there. Back on the old battleship, Admiral Carter was sitting in the crystal command chair. The moment she had settled into it, everything changed. The ship's systems connected with her mind in a way she had never imagined possible. She could feel the massive power core humming deep in the ship's belly. She could sense the weapon systems, though she did not yet understand what they were designed to do. Most importantly, she could feel the ship's intelligence touching her thoughts. Admiral, Dr. Brooks said from nearby, your neural activity is off the charts. The ship is interfacing directly with your brain. Carter nodded, though she did not take her attention away from the flow of information pouring into her mind. It's showing me things, she said softly. Memories. Not human memories. What kind of memories? Martinez asked. Ancient ones. There was another species here, long before any of the current council races existed. They called themselves the Architects. They built this ship, or at least they changed it into what it is now. Sullivan leaned forward. Changed it for what purpose? Carter was quiet for a long moment as more memories flowed through her. She saw images of vast construction projects, of technologies that could reshape matter itself, of beings of pure thought, working alongside primitive humans to create something magnificent. They knew this day would come, she said finally. They knew the Devourers would return someday, and they knew that when they did, the galaxy would need defenders with the will to fight them. So they chose humans, Brooks asked. No, Carter replied. They gave us the tools, but the choice to use them is ours. She stood up from the chair, feeling the ship's systems reluctantly disconnect from her mind. Get word to Captain Morrison. Tell him the Defiance will be ready for battle. And tell him that when we reach Kepler Station, the galaxy is going to see what human determination can accomplish. As if responding to her words, the lights throughout the ship grew brighter. Deep in its core, systems that had slept for millennia began to wake up. The USS Defiance was coming back to life, and with it, humanity's chance to prove that sometimes the old ways really were the best ways. The ancient battleship had been dismissed as scrap metal by the most advanced species in the galaxy. Soon, they would learn just how wrong they had been. The combined fleet of the Galactic Council stretched across space like a metal forest. 800 ships from dozens of different species had gathered at Kepler Station, the massive fortress that guarded the galaxy's frontier. The station itself was as big as a small moon, bristling with weapons and shield generators. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance and watched the other ships through the main viewing screen. The Zephyrian vessels looked like giant wasps with wings made of metal. The cetacean dreadnoughts were shaped like whales, their hulls smooth and blue. The crystalline Vorthan ships caught the light from nearby stars and threw it back in rainbow patterns. Among all these advanced warships, the Defiance looked old and scarred. Its gray hull was marked with centuries of damage, and its weapon ports were still hidden beneath armor plating. The other ships kept their distance, as if they were embarrassed to be seen near such an ancient vessel. "Admiral," Commander Pete Sullivan said as he approached her command chair, "I'm monitoring the fleet communications. They're not saying nice things about us." Carter nodded grimly. She could imagine what the aliens were saying. The human rust bucket, the floating scrap pile, the dead weight that would only get in the way during the real fighting. "Let them talk," she said. "Actions speak louder than words." Dr. Helen Brooks looked up from her science station. "Admiral, the ship's neural interface is trying to connect with you again. I think it wants to show you something important." Carter had been avoiding the crystal command chair since they arrived at Kepler Station. The connection with the ship's ancient systems was overwhelming, filling her mind with memories and knowledge that did not belong to her. But now, with battle approaching, she knew she had no choice. She settled into the chair and immediately felt the ship's consciousness touching her thoughts. This time, the sensation was different. Instead of showing her memories of the past, the ship was sharing tactical information about the present. Carter could suddenly see every ship in the fleet as clearly as if she were standing next to them. She could feel their power levels, their weapon charges, even the emotions of their crews. The Defiance was analyzing everything, preparing for battle in ways that no other ship could match. "My God," she whispered, "it's not just a warship. It's a battlefield command system." Chief Engineer Roy Martinez called from his station. "Admiral, we're getting strange readings from the weapon systems. They're charging, but I can't tell what kind of weapons they are. The energy patterns don't match anything in our databases." "That's because they're not from our databases," Carter replied. "They're architect technology. Weapons designed to fight enemies that our current science can't even imagine." Fleet Admiral Tox Kalen's voice came over the communication system. "All ships, prepare for battle. Long-range sensors show the Devourers will emerge from hyperspace in 30 minutes. Carter felt her heart rate increase. Through the ships. Sensors, she could feel the nervousness of crews throughout the fleet. Despite their advanced technology and superior numbers, everyone knew that the Devourers were something different. Something worse than any enemy they had faced before. "Human vessel Defiance," came Kethvar's voice over a private channel. "Perhaps you should consider staying back during the initial engagement. Your ship might be more useful for rescue operations after the battle." The insult was clear, but Carter kept her response professional. "Thank you for your concern, Ambassador. The Defiance will take whatever position Admiral Tox Kalen assigns." 20 minutes later, space itself began to ripple. The stars seemed to bend and twist as something enormous pushed its way through the fabric of reality. The first Devourer emerged from hyperspace, like a nightmare coming to life. It was huge beyond imagination. 10 kilometers long and half as wide, its surface looked like living flesh that pulsed with its own internal light. Organic weapons sprouted from its hull like tumors, and its front end opened to reveal rows of teeth the size of starships. The second and third Devourers appeared moments later, each one as terrifying as the first. They moved through space not like ships, but like hunting animals that had caught the scent of prey. All ships, engage immediately, Admiral Tox Kalin ordered. Do not let them reach the inhabited systems. The Galactic Council fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams that could cut through asteroid belts struck the lead Devourer's hull. Plasma torpedoes that could destroy cities exploded against its surface. Particle weapons that could split atoms hammered it from every direction. For a moment, it looked like the combined firepower might actually hurt the creature. Sections of its organic hull burned and bubbled under the assault. But then Carter watched in horror as the damaged areas began to heal themselves. The Devourer's living tissue regenerated almost as fast as it was being destroyed. Impossible. Kethvar's voice crackled over the communications. Our weapons should be tearing it apart. The Devourer turned toward the nearest group of ships and opened fire with its organic weapons. Streams of acid that ate through hull plating like paper. Bioelectric charges that overloaded shield generators and fried electronic systems. Spores that attached to ship hulls and began growing into parasitic creatures. Carter watched through the Defiance's sensors as 3 Zephyrian cruisers were destroyed in the first exchange. Their hulls dissolved under the acid attack, and their crews had no time to escape. All ships, fall back and regroup, Tox Kalin ordered, but his voice showed the desperation he was trying to hide. The battle continued for 2 hours with no success. The Council fleet had the numbers and the technology, but the Devourers seemed to be immune to everything they could throw at them. Even worse, the creatures were learning from each attack, adapting their defenses to protect against weapons they had already faced. Carter felt the frustration and fear of the alien crews through the ship's neural network. Ships that had dominated their home systems for centuries were being swatted aside like insects. The most advanced military forces in the galaxy were helpless against these ancient horrors. Human vessel Defiance, Admiral Tox Kalin's voice was tight with desperation. Can your ship contribute anything to this battle? We are running out of options. Carter looked around her bridge at her human crew. Martinez was sweating as he monitored the weapon systems. Brooks was frantically scanning the Devourers for any weakness they could exploit. Sullivan was coordinating with the other human ships. In the fleet, trying to find some way to help. Through the neural link, Carter could feel the ship itself waiting. The ancient architect systems were ready, but they needed her permission to reveal their true power. Admiral Tox Kalin, she said. Into her communicator, I need all ships to clear a firing corridor directly in front of the Defiance. Give us a straight shot at the lead Devourer. Admiral Carter, Kethvar interrupted. Your primitive weapons cannot possibly affect these creatures. You will only waste ammunition and endanger other ships with your attempt. Trust me, Carter replied. Just clear the corridor. She could hear arguments breaking out over the communication channels. Some of the alien commanders thought she was crazy. Others were so desperate that they were willing to try anything. Finally, Tox Kalin's voice cut through the debate. All ships, clear firing corridor for the human vessel. Defiance, you have 60 seconds before the Devourers close with our main battle line. Carter settled deeper into the command chair and felt the ship's full power connecting with her mind. Suddenly, she could see not just the present battle, but echoes of battles fought 50,000 years ago. The architects had faced the Devourers before and learned how to defeat them. Now their knowledge flowed through her consciousness like water through a desert. "All stations, prepare for weapons activation," she announced to her crew. "Admiral," Martinez called out, "the weapon systems are showing power levels I didn't think were possible." "What exactly are we about to fire?" Carter smiled as ancient memories filled her mind with understanding. Something the Devourers haven't seen in a very long time. Something they thought was lost forever. The Defiance began to change. Hidden panels slid away from its hull to reveal weapon systems that had been sleeping for millennia. The ship's outline shifted as massive energy collectors extended from its core. Space itself seemed to bend around the ancient battleship as it drew power from dimensions beyond normal reality. Throughout the fleet, sensor operators stared at their displays in disbelief. The energy readings coming from the human ship were beyond anything they had ever recorded. "That's impossible," whispered a Vorthan science officer. "No ship can generate that much power." Carter felt the weapon charging, reality warping around. The Defiance as it prepared to fire. The lead Devourer seemed to sense the threat and turned its attention toward the human ship. Streams of acid and bioelectric energy hammered the Defiance's shields, but the ancient defensive systems held firm. "Admiral," Sullivan said quietly, "whatever you're about to do, the whole galaxy is watching." Carter nodded and placed her hand on the firing control. Through the neural link, she could feel the weapon's eagerness to be used after so many years of sleep. "Fire!" she commanded. The USS Defiance fired its main weapon, and reality itself screamed. The beam that erupted from the ancient battleship was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was not made of energy or matter, but of pure nothingness. The void lance tore through space, leaving behind a trail of absolute emptiness that even light could not cross. "Admiral," Lisa Carter watched through the ship's neural interface as the weapon struck the lead Devourer. The massive creature, 10 kilometers of living nightmare, simply stopped existing. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but completely erased from reality, as if it had never been born. The silence that followed was absolute. 800 ships from dozens of species floated in space, their crews staring at empty sensors where a monster had been moments before. The remaining 2 Devourers stopped their advance, their organic hulls pulsing with what could only be described as fear. "Impossible," whispered Kethvar over the communication channel. "No weapon in the galaxy has that kind of power." Council Prime Zara 9's energy field flickered with shock. "The creature is not just destroyed. It has been removed from existence. Entirely. Our sensors cannot even detect debris." Admiral Tox Kalen's voice was barely audible. "Admiral Carter, what kind of weapon was that?" Carter felt the ancient memories flowing through her mind as the ship's systems shared their knowledge. "A void lance," she replied. "The architects created it to fight enemies that could not be defeated by conventional weapons. It does not destroy matter. It erases it from the universe." The second Devourer seemed to realize the threat it faced. Its organic hull began to glow brighter, and new weapons sprouted from its surface. It fired everything it had at the Defiance, streams of acid, and bioelectric energy that could melt through starship armor. But the human battleship was no longer hiding its true nature. Ancient shield generators created barriers of twisted spacetime that absorbed the attacks harmlessly. The Defiance began to move forward, its hull continuing to transform as more weapon systems revealed themselves. "Admiral," Chief Engineer Roy Martinez called from his station, "the ship is manufacturing new weapons in real time. I'm seeing systems that weren't there 5 minutes ago." Dr. Helen Brooks looked up from her science station, her face pale with amazement. "The ship is not just using stored weapons. It's creating new ones designed specifically to counter each enemy it faces." The second Devourer tried to retreat, but the Defiance was faster. Temporal displacement cannons fired bolts that aged sections of the creature's hull into dust within seconds. Quantum mines phased through its organic shields and detonated inside its vital organs. Carter could feel the ship's satisfaction as it destroyed its ancient enemy. The Architect technology was working exactly as designed, adapting and evolving to meet any threat. This was what the ship had been built for, what it had waited 300 years to accomplish. The dying devourer released a sound that no translation system could interpret, but every living being in the fleet understood its meaning. It was the cry of something that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years, now facing its own extinction. Commander Pete Sullivan moved to stand beside Carter's command chair. "Admiral, the third devourer is trying to escape." Through the neural link, Carter could see the last creature attempting to flee into hyperspace. Its organic hull was pulsing with patterns that seemed to be calling for help, sending messages to others of its kind scattered across the dark spaces between galaxies. "We cannot let it escape," Carter said. "If it warns the others about our capabilities, they will adapt their own defenses." The Defiance moved to intercept the fleeing devourer. More weapons emerged from the ship's hull, devices that bent light and twisted gravity to create impossible geometries of destruction. Phase cannons that could strike targets in multiple dimensions at once. Reality bombs that exploded the very fabric of spacetime. The third devourer turned to face its pursuer, but it was already too late. The ancient battleship had revealed weapons that were beyond the creature's ability to counter. Within minutes, the last of the three monsters was nothing more than expanding clouds of organic debris. The combined fleet of the Galactic Council floated in stunned silence. The most feared enemies in galactic history had been destroyed by a single human ship that they had dismissed as worthless scrap metal. Admiral Toxcallan was the first to break the silence. "Admiral Carter, on behalf of the entire fleet, I must ask, how many ships like the Defiance does humanity possess?" Carter felt the weight of 800 ships waiting for her answer. Through the neural link, she could sense the fear and respect that had replaced the mockery of just hours before. Every species in the galaxy now understood that they had gravely underestimated humanity. "That information is classified," she replied, though the truth was that the Defiance appeared to be unique. The ship's memory banks contained no records of other vessels like it, only hints that the architects had created this one prototype before disappearing from the galaxy. The response she gave was the right one. Let them wonder. Let them imagine fleets of ships with power beyond their comprehension, hidden in human space. Fear would keep them honest in the negotiations to come. Kethvar's voice was very different from the arrogant tone he had used before. "Admiral Carter, the Zephyrian Empire formally requests immediate alliance with humanity. We offer full technology exchange and unlimited access to our industrial facilities." Similar offers began flooding the communication channels. The Cetaceans wanted to share their advanced shipyards. The Vorthans offered access to their crystal-growing techniques. Even the secretive Hive Queens extended invitations to their hidden worlds. Every species that had laughed at humanity's primitive technology now desperately wanted to be their friend. The Galactic Council votes unanimously. Council Prime Zara 9 announced to grant humanity full membership with all rights and privileges. "We also formally request that the Defiance serve as flagship of our combined defense fleet." Carter smiled as she felt the ship's approval flowing through the neural link. This was what the architects had intended, not just to create a weapon, but to give humanity the tools to become protectors of the galaxy. "Humanity accepts full council membership," she replied. "The Defiance will remain stationed at Kepler Station under my command, ready to defend against any future threats." What she did not mention was that the ship was already teaching her crew everything the architects had known. Dr. Brooks was downloading blueprints for technologies that would revolutionize human science. Martinez was learning to build reactors that could power entire star systems. Even the regular crew members were gaining knowledge that would make them the most capable spacers in the galaxy. The ancient battleship was not just a weapon. It was a gift from a vanished civilization, a legacy that would transform humanity from a dismissed species into the galaxy's guardians. As the combined fleet began to disperse, carrying news of humanity's victory to every corner of the galaxy, Carter remained connected to the ship's neural interface. She could feel other architect facilities responding to the Defiance's awakening, ancient installations scattered across the galaxy that had been waiting for this moment. "Admiral," Sullivan said quietly, "what happens now?" Carter watched the stars through the viewing screen, each one representing systems that might contain more architect technology waiting to be discovered. "Now we learn what the architects really left for us, and we make sure the galaxy stays safe." Deep in the ship's memory banks, more secrets waited to be unlocked. Star maps showing the locations of hidden bases, technical specifications for technologies that could reshape planets, and always the gentle presence of the architect intelligence that had chosen humanity as worthy inheritors of their legacy. The galaxy had laughed at humanity's offering of an ancient relic, but the USS Defiance had proven that sometimes these oldest weapons are the most powerful, and that underestimating any species, especially humans, could be a fatal mistake. The age of human guardianship had begun. 6 months after the battle at Kepler Station, Captain Jake Morrison stood once again in the great council chamber on Nexus Prime. But everything had changed. The curved crystal walls that once echoed with alien laughter now hummed with respectful attention as dozens of species hung on his every word. The same aliens who had mocked humanity's primitive technology now competed for human attention like children seeking approval from their teacher. Where once Jake had stood alone and humiliated, he now commanded the respect of the entire Galaxy. Council. Prime Zaranine's energy field flickered with what Jake had learned to recognize as nervous excitement. "Captain Morrison, the Council has reviewed humanity's proposals for expanded defense initiatives. We are prepared to approve unlimited funding for any project you deem necessary." Jake nodded politely, though inside he felt amazed at how quickly things had changed. "The Council's support is appreciated. Admiral Carter's preliminary survey has identified 17 systems where architect facilities may be located. We will need joint exploration teams to investigate these sites safely." Kethvar, the Zephyrian ambassador who had once dismissed humans as worthless, leaned forward eagerly. "The Zephyrian Empire offers our most advanced scout ships and our best xenoarchaeologists for these missions. We ask only to be included in the discoveries." Similar offers flooded in from every species present. The Cetaceans wanted to provide their deep space sensors. The Vorthans offered their crystal-based computing systems to help decode architect data. Even the mysterious energy beings pledged their support for humanity's research efforts. What none of them knew was that humanity no longer needed their help with architect technology. The USS Defiance had been teaching its human crew everything the ancient race had known. Dr. Helen Brooks now understood physics principles that would not be discovered by council scientists for another 1,000 years. Chief Engineer Roy Martinez could build reactors that exceeded the power output of entire star systems. Jake smiled diplomatically at the eager alien faces around him. "All offers will be considered carefully. Humanity believes in cooperation and shared knowledge." It was the right thing to say, even though the truth was more complicated. The architect knowledge flowing from the Defiance was specifically designed for human minds. Other species could learn from it, but they could never fully understand it the way humans could. The ancient race had chosen their inheritors very carefully. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, Admiral Lisa Carter sat in the crystal command chair aboard the USS Defiance. The ship now served as flagship of the combined defense fleet stationed permanently at Kepler Station. But its real purpose was far more important than any official position. Through the neural link, Carter could feel the awakening of architect facilities throughout the galaxy. Ancient bases that had slept for 50,000 years were responding to the Defiance's presence, their dormant systems coming online one by one. Admiral, Commander Pete Sullivan reported from his station. We're receiving a signal from the Vega system. The same type of energy signature we detected at the other architect sites. Carter nodded, unsurprised. This was the 17th facility to activate in the past month. Each one contained more knowledge, more technology, more tools that humanity would need for the role the architects had planned for them. Set course for Vega, she ordered, and send word to Earth Command. Tell them we'll need another survey team. Dr. Brooks looked up from her science station with excitement. Admiral, the preliminary scans from the other sites are incredible. We've found manufacturing facilities that can build ships in hours instead of years. Medical technology that can extend human lifespan indefinitely. Terraforming equipment that can turn dead worlds into gardens. And weapons, Martinez added quietly. Lots of weapons. The architects were preparing for something much bigger than just the Devourers. Carter felt a chill run through her as she accessed deeper levels of the ship's memory banks. The Devourers had been just one threat among many. The galaxy was full of dangers that the current species had never imagined. Horrors. Sleeping in dark places between the stars. But the architects had foreseen this. They had built defenses and weapons and left them for a species capable of using them wisely. They had chosen humanity not just for their fighting ability, but for their capacity to protect others. On Earth, President Maria Santos read the Daily. Reports from the expanding human exploration fleets with growing amazement. Humanity had gone from being rejected by the Galactic Council to becoming its most important member in less than a year. Ma'am, her science advisor said during their morning briefing, the technology transfers from the architect sites are revolutionizing every field of human knowledge. We're making advances that should have taken centuries. Santos nodded, though. She also felt the weight of responsibility that came with such rapid progress. What about the other species? How are they handling humanity's new status? Mixed reactions, her diplomatic advisor replied. Most are eager to cooperate and share in the benefits. But there are some groups that resent our sudden rise to prominence. They feel that we've gained too much power too quickly. Any specific threats? Nothing overt. But intelligence suggests some of the more militant factions are discussing ways to limit human influence. They're concerned that we're becoming too dominant in galactic affairs. Santos understood their concerns. In just 6 months, humanity had gone from having no voice in galactic politics to essentially leading the entire council. It was a change that would make anyone nervous. But what the other species did not understand was that humanity had not sought this power. The architects had thrust it upon them, along with the responsibility to use it wisely. Back aboard the Defiance, Carter was exploring new sections of the ship that seemed to appear as needed. The vessel was larger inside than outside, its interior dimensions shifting to accommodate whatever functions were required. Today, she had discovered what could only be called a nursery, though not for human children. The room contained growing tanks filled with developing technologies, new tools and weapons that the ship was creating based on threats it detected throughout the galaxy. The ship is evolving, she explained to Sullivan as they walked through the strange chamber. It's not just using stored architect knowledge. It's learning, adapting, creating new solutions for new problems. What kind of problems? Sullivan asked. Carter paused beside one of the growing tanks, where something that looked like a cross between a computer and a flower was taking shape. The ship's long-range sensors are detecting disturbances in distant galaxies. Something has been hunting and destroying entire civilizations, moving from galaxy to galaxy like a plague. The Devourers were just scouts, Sullivan realized with horror. Worse than that, Carter replied. They were prey. Something drove him here, something that hunts creatures that can devour planets. And it's getting closer. The knowledge flowed through the neural link into Carter's mind. Images of galaxies gone dark, of star systems stripped bare by entities that made the Devourers look like harmless insects. The architects had seen this threat coming and prepared the only defense they could imagine. How long do we have? Sullivan asked. The ship estimates 50 years before the first advanced scouts reach our galaxy. Maybe 100 before the main force arrives. And humanity is supposed to stop them? Carter smiled grimly. Not just humanity. All of us. Every species in the galaxy working together, using architect technology and human leadership to build defenses that can protect not just our galaxy, but all the others that might come after. As if responding to her words, new sections of the ship began to unfold. Manufacturing bays that could produce fleets of vessels. Training facilities that could teach alien crews to use human tactics. Communication arrays that could coordinate the defense of an entire galaxy. The USS Defiance had been much more than a battleship. It was the seed of a galactic defense network, designed to turn a collection of competitive species into a unified force capable of protecting not just themselves, but all life in the universe. Jake Morrison finished his presentation to the council and prepared to return to Earth. As he walked through the station corridors, he reflected on how much had changed. Humanity had gained everything they had ever wanted from the Galactic Council, and much more that they had never imagined possible. But with great power came great responsibility. The galaxy now looked to humanity for protection and leadership. It was a burden that would test every human virtue and challenge them to be better than they had ever been before. The ancient battleship that had once drawn laughter had become the foundation of a new age. And humanity, dismissed as primitive and worthless, had become the guardians of galactic civilization. The real test was yet to come.